There was a time when buying a PlayStation console meant one thing above anything else. That you were going to get the best single player experiences that money could buy when they would be released. Not maybe or sometimes, but consistently, this was the case. When it came to Sony's first party studios for years, you knew that you could expect polished releases that were narrative driven and actually would also feel complete. God of War, Last of Us, Uncharted, Ratchet & Clank, the list just keeps on going. PlayStation built its identity on something very clear that people resonated with, and that was the single player excellence they would deliver. But something honestly feels off with its current era, the PS5 era, I mean. It doesn't feel the same, it just feels off to me. Misguided maybe, and at times like it's being ruined on purpose almost. And it turns out that just might be the case because what drove PlayStation has been removed. And the person who can prove it is none other than someone who worked at PlayStation since its inception. This brings me to Shu Yoshida. If you're a fan of PlayStation, you'll likely know who this guy is. Shu has been a part of PlayStation since, like I said, its inception, right? Working at the company since 1993, which is a long time because I was born in 92. Good lord, dude. Anyways, Shu was also the president of Sony Worldwide Studios from 2008 to 2019. And then he ran PlayStation Indies, in which he scoured the globe looking for the coolest and most imaginative indie games that were being made to then offer them deals and bringing those games to PlayStation as well. Shu was head of Indies from 2019 to 2025. And then in 2025, he retired officially after working for PlayStation for 31 years. To say that this guy was instrumental to the foundation and the core identity of PlayStation, like that would be an understatement, okay? Shu Yoshida, if you ask me, he was the heart of PlayStation. So what happened? What's the problem then? Well, recently, ThisWeekinVideoGames.com released an article where Shu Yoshida spoke candidly about his time at Sony PlayStation. Think of it like a post-mortem of sorts. This article is titled, Shu Yoshida says Jim Ryan fired him from PlayStation Studios because I didn't listen to him. So who's Jim Ryan, in case you also don't know? So Jim Ryan was the CEO and chairman of Sony Interactive Entertainment from 2019 to 2024. Coincidentally, that time frame of just 5 years, Jim Ryan would also completely alter the trajectory and the philosophy as well as the status of PlayStation as a worldwide brand. And none of that, in my opinion, was for the better. One of Jim Ryan's biggest changes to PlayStation as a brand was that he wanted Sony to make their games multi-platform. This is why Sony's first-party games, like a Spider-Man or a God of War, would come to Steam. This was Jim's plan. He wanted to expand Sony's reach. It helped a little, I guess, but mostly devalued the concept of the PlayStation console brand as a whole, if you ask me. Because Jim was giving the exclusive games that should define the console away to other platforms, meaning that people didn't need to buy a PS5 to enjoy whichever game that Sony made themselves. This hasn't paid off for Sony by the way that they would want it to, but it also gets worse. Jim Ryan is also to blame for Sony pivoting from their single-player philosophy that has defined them for decades, instead opting now to chase that live service hype train. This is why Sony has greenlighted so many live service titles in the last few years. Yeah, that was all Jim's doing. He wanted Sony to have multiple Fortnite-like games that tied to their brand. The only game that really succeeded to any insane degree, I guess, was probably Helldivers 2. Everything else, for the most part, has either failed, like a Concord, or done okay, but not amazing, like Marathon. I guess MLB The Show, that's their baseball series, that does well at least too, so that's something, I guess. But Jim was also the reason why Sony's first-party games also ballooned in budget sizes as well. Because bigger means better, obviously, except, well, not really. Spider-Man 2, for example, from Insomniac, somehow costed an eye-watering $300 million, which was absolutely insane. Considering Sony bought Insomniac, the developers who made those Spider-Man games, for $229 million in 2019. Yeah, like I said. Sony's spending budgets are, or I guess were, out of whack. These days, it's hard to tell exactly where they stand. Ghost of Yotei did decent enough for them. Last of Us 2 clearly hasn't hit the target Sony wants, considering just how many times they've re-released that game already in some other form just to recoup the costs. And like I said, outside of Helldivers 2, most of Sony's live service offerings haven't been doing so hot. Even franchises and studios they bought that were doing well, see Bungie and Destiny 2 for example, are also floundering, as Destiny 2 player counts are just like in the pits of despair right now for months on end. And just one look at Marathon Steam charts right now, as you can see there, by the way, this is Marathon's player counts on a Saturday morning, which is when I'm writing this, are not looking very good, okay? Steam is also Marathon's main platform, meaning that 14,000, that's their high player count right now. And for a game that is PvP focused, this is bad. Like, really, really bad. But again, this is what Jim Ryan did to Sony. He's not there anymore, thank God, because Jim Ryan was awful. I mean, Herman Hulst is still running PlayStation, unfortunately, and he's also kind of like Jim Ryan, and what Jim Ryan has done, it still, if you will, permeates on PlayStation still, because his decisions are still to come out, if you will. Games take a long time, obviously, so we're probably still going to be seeing many games that Jim has green-lighted that are yet to come, and God help me. But since Herman Hulst, for example, he came from Guerrilla Games, which did the Horizon series, that's why so many Horizon games have been made, because it's all Herman's baby. And Herman was also the one who championed Concord, and well, we all know how that one turned out, don't we? Anyway, this is all a long-winded history lesson to tell you that a bunch of people who should not be in power either were or still are at Sony PlayStation. While the guy who actually knows what PlayStation stands for in Shu Yoshida was fired by the people who were tearing the brand down. Like Shuhei said, he was fired by Jim Ryan because he refused to listen to him. Well, normally that would be a bad idea, but when you're Shuhei Yoshida, you frankly shouldn't have to listen to anyone when it comes to game design. So this entire article and story comes from Alt Games. It's a games festival that happens yearly in Australia, which Shuhei was attending. And he had a panel where he got to air out all his frustrations, and this is what Shuhei said as it reads here. I helped Santa Monica to make God of War, Naughty Dog to make Uncharted and The Last of Us, and Sucker Punch in making the beautiful Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima was one of the last games that I worked on as the president of Worldwide Studios. But in 2019, after 11 years leading the first-party development, I was fired from the role. This is an insane statement, because objectively speaking, when Shuhei Yoshida was in charge of Sony's first-party development offerings, you cannot deny that Shuhei was effectively leading the most influential time period games-wise being developed in modern gaming at the time at Sony. This means that Shuhei has had his hand in pretty much most of the games that define Sony PlayStation and their brand. If we go from the top to bottom when he was running things, this isn't all of them by the way, but we have the Loco Roco games, Patapon, Motorstorm, Resistance, Ratchet & Clank, Wipeout, Twisted Metal, Sly Cooper, Killzone, Infamous, Little Big Planet, Fat Princess, Gravity Rush, Horizon, Uncharted, as in the entire series, Knack, SingStar, Gran Turismo, God of War, like the original ones, but also including the Norse games, Spider-Man 2018, Days Gone, Everybody's Golf, MLB The Show, as in all of them pretty much, The Last of Us 1 and 2, and Ghost of Tsushima. I'm probably also missing some for sure. This doesn't even include, say, the third-party games that Shuhei worked to get deals with that signed with PlayStation 2. But this is from a first-party perspective at least, so if you're a fan of PlayStation, you have to some degree, you have played some of the games I just mentioned. And you cannot deny that from that list of games, there are quite a few bangers to play. Again, they were all green-lighted, worked on to some degree, and produced with Shuhei's involvement. And Jim Ryan looked at him and fired the guy, and suddenly, when Jim and Herman get in power, all your single-player offerings have hit a standstill. And magically, live service games are all that matters now. And I also forgot to mention, by the way, this big mistake, whoops, Shuhei also worked closely with From Software on Demon Souls and Bloodborne as well. Again, need I say more about Shuhei's importance to the PlayStation brand? Yeah, I don't think so. We can all agree that guy is pretty much goated for all the games that he worked on. As Shuhei says of his own words here, Jim Ryan wanted to remove me from first party because I didn't listen to him. He asked me to do some ridiculous things, and I said no. The way that it's framed here, as you can see, Shuhei confirms that when Herman Hulst was positioned to take over Sony's first-party offerings, that it was done in a vague way under Jim Ryan's leadership that led to Shuhei being removed from his position and placed instead on indies. This tells me what I feared, that Shuhei was blindsided by the corporate restructuring that he was a part of, and that Shuhei was not okay with being removed from his position, and I mean really, who can blame him? Again, I told you what he worked on, guys. Come on, Tell me in the comments, am I crazy here? Is this guy not instrumental to the core identity of PlayStation, or am I just nuts? If I am, let me know, but I'm pretty confident in saying I'm not at all. Because Shuhei wasn't just some random guy that Sony hired, okay? Shuhei built the brand from the ground up. You need to realize something, okay? Telling Shu Yoshida that he was no longer in charge or needed of Sony's first party stuff is insane. This is like telling Shigeru Miyamoto over at Nintendo, oh, you mean the guy who made Mario and Zelda? Yeah, that's cool and all, but we're gonna have this other guy runs Nintendo's first party development now? Sure, yeah, you made Nintendo what it is, but like, can you just, leave or something? That's basically what Sony was doing with Shuhei. This is why I keep using the ship of Theseus theory when I speak about core development studios that suddenly go from these legendary game makers to like making slop like a Rocksteady, right? Or something like that. The name of a company only matters if the people who made that thing special are still there. You don't go to a concert expecting to see like Iron Maiden play live and then you turn up and it's a cover band instead. Like you want to see the guys who made Iron Maiden what it is. And it's the same thing with video games, really anything else. Like look at movies even. People will watch anything if their favorite director makes it, right? Oh, Denis Villeneuve's doing the Dune movies? Like sign me up. Christopher Nolan's Batman? Like yes, please. These names mean something. People mean something. And Shu Yoshida mattered to PlayStation. And Jim Ryan, effectively, threw Shu away because he was, I guess, getting in the way of what Jim Ryan thought should be Sony's future. And that is devastating to hear. Because I believe the PS5 era has been no joke, one of the worst core Sony eras in existence. We've had more games get canceled by Sony's first-party studios than we have had real games be released that people can play and enjoy from those same first-party studios. For example, there was that one game that Jim Ryan greenlighted, no doubt, called Fair Games. That one's from ex-Ubisoft developers and Haven Studios, and recently Fair Games, which is a live service game mind you, had a pre-alpha test that was done under strict NDAs, or non-disclosure agreements. As seen here from Push Square, information leaked anyways, and Jim Ryan's and Herman Hulst's next live service offering, Fair Games, is allegedly getting absolutely roasted by the people who have tested this game. So this news comes from Tom Henderson of Insider Gaming. Basically, Fair Games had a Discord server where everyone who signed an NDA to play it could then speak openly to give the developers over at Haven Studios feedback on this game. The first trailer for this game, which features the usual character designs that Sony's been trying to push for a long time, has apparently been gutted. The game is now toned down and apparently it looks more in line with, say, Call of Duty or The Division. But overall, the feedback has been overwhelmingly negative, with key aspects like the gameplay, the class design, and even the movement of Fair Games is being criticized to be absolute trash by those who have leaked information about the game's pre-alpha test from this Discord. The game is also, in case you don't know, still an extraction shooter. Yes, I know, another extraction shooter from Sony, God help us. And it's a game where you were in teams, of course, of 3 people fighting like other groups of 3 people for loot and bank vaults. Wow, can't wait to play that. If you can't tell, I think this game is dead on arrival. I don't see any future where this game will survive in any capacity. But why I bring this game up is because it's relevant to the story here. Jim Ryan and Herman Hulst are to blame for allowing slop like Fair Games to even be made in the first place. Now, if it were up to Shu Yoshida, this game likely wouldn't even exist because Shu knows deep down that something like this is not Sony's core identity. Sony's future is single-player games, like it always has been. Why spend all these hundreds of millions of dollars making live service shooter games when people just want the next God of War? They want Infamous to come back. They want Uncharted. They want Killzone to come back. Where is Killzone? Like, why don't we have Resistance remasters already? Hell, a new Resistance game would be awesome too. Where is a new Legend of Dragoon? Why are you guys remaking Horizon Zero Dawn already? Which, by the way, that remake already got dumped on PS Plus recently because nobody bought it. Like, big surprise there, because why would you? When, like, Bloodborne, the game that everyone actually wants remastered or remade, is just being left at 30 frames per second still to this day on the PS4. This is what I'm talking about. Sony's leadership is so hell-bent on forcing this live service fart, they're going to soil themselves, guys. I don't know how else to put it. We don't need these games. All the best-selling games of 2026 have had one thing in common. Guess what it is? Crimson Desert, Resident Evil Requiem, Pocopia, Pragmata, Winrose, and more. What's the common denominator here? Right, they're all single-player games. Well, Windrose you can also play with your friends, but it's still at its core a single player game, so the point still stands anyways. We don't need these games. There's a reason why. You're seeing once live service offerings that are being transformed into single player games instead, because that tide is shifting, right? Crimson Desert proved it already. Hell, you even have Dragon Sword Awakening. That's another upcoming action JRPG that was supposed to be a live service gacha game, but it will now be a premium single player title instead. Gee, I wonder why. Because this model cannot sustain itself anymore. If that were true, then Marathon would not be sitting at 14,000 users on Steam right now, Fair Games would be getting glowing previews, and Concord would still exist. Yet none of that is the case, is it? As Shuhei then said here, as you can see, he grew up with Jim Ryan at Sony, and he didn't like seeing what happened at the company. Shu did embrace his new role as head of indies because he did love those games a lot. Shu also, by the way, actually plays games too. He's not just some like random executive. Shu has also platinum games like Bloodborne and many of Sony's first party offerings as well. So he's not just some dude in like a suit. Like this guy, like many old school game designers, are actual gamers themselves. Go figure. After leaving Sony with 31 years of experience, almost as long as I've been alive, dude, Shuhei has now founded his own private consulting firm called Yosp Incorporated, which is also the username of his PSN account, by the way. Yosp, I mean. So Shuhei later on states how he now not only consults on future PlayStation games to some degree, but that he also helps out games on Nintendo and Xbox as well. Which is good, but I mean, again, Sony could have had all this institutional knowledge for themselves only. Now their competitors are going to be benefiting from the influence of a man who shaped their entire brand for decades. All because Jim Ryan thought that he knew better than Shuhei on what defined PlayStation, when in reality, he did not. Because now that the dust has settled, Jim Ryan is out of games entirely. Shuhei is still here because he loves it, but he's working with everybody now. And Herman Hulst is trying to make you care about fair games, and I wouldn't be surprised if like Horizon Forbidden West even gets remade at some point too, because Herman just keeps trying to make Horizon into the #1 PlayStation brand, when all anybody wants is a Bloodborne sequel instead. Seriously, where is the remastered? It's been 11 years. And Sony has done nothing with Bloodborne, despite everybody wanting it. Like, actually crazy, dude. One of the final things that Shuhei says in this article could easily be advice that Sony themselves should take, is where Shu says that, as you can see here, when you follow the trend, you're already too late. And he's right, because that's exactly what Sony has been doing the entire PS5 generation pretty much so far. They are just chasing trends instead of what they used to do, which was make those trends, and it hasn't been working out for them. Sure, okay, we have some single player games. I mean, Saros does come out soon, but we're 6 years deep into the PS5 generation right now, and there is not nearly as much to show for it compared to the previous generations before, right? Like, remember when Sony used to market their console and their games with stuff like this on screen saying only on PlayStation? Yet now every game that is labeled there is now not only on PlayStation anymore. Like, they're losing their core identity, right? That is which is the major problem, dude. And they're chasing trends that just aren't paying off. There's no way that one Helldivers 2 success is somehow worth the revenue and the critical acclaim, like the loss of multiple potential single player games that Sony could have released already, instead of canceling every game that they're greenlighting time and time again. Like, they just keep doing it. Where's the Last of Us Online game they promised? Oh, right, it's canceled. Then they did that God of War live service game. Oh, also gone. It's getting ridiculous, right? We used to have consistency. Now it's slower and far more uncertain than ever. I get it to a point, right? It was all to build the reoccurring revenue and the long-term engagement all these companies want to compete in that space, dominated by the Fortnites and Destinies, which both games aren't doing well, by the way. And this was all just what it was, right? A strategic pivot. That's what it always is. Live service games, however, are next to impossible to get right. We all know this. For every success that there is in that genre, there is a graveyard of failures behind them. And they also demand an enormous amount of resources, not just time, but the talent and the budget too. And all of those resources used to go into single player games, and now that the pipeline for that sort of experience has slowed considerably down, I'm just starting to wonder, like, what happened to the PlayStation I knew? All this has done is make friction. The brand was built on a core identity, a legacy that people like a Shuhei Yoshida champion. But to see it moving in this other direction it's sad to me, right? Like, I used to look forward to Sony story-driven experiences. because they actually felt like complete games and they were very consistent. Now everything just feels less focused to me. Like, what's the big Sony game of the year? I guess it's Wolverine. And beyond that, we got Ceros, and I guess so far that's kind of it, right? I guess we have Kenna, maybe? Like the sequel? Is that it, I guess? To be fair, AAA development has changed pretty much everywhere, right? Games take longer, budgets are now huge, the risk is always there. So I get the idea at first of like chasing those reoccurring profits. In theory, I get it. But the truth is PlayStation, like as a brand, was not built on those philosophies. So I don't think that they will stick the way that Jim Ryan has wanted it to. Clearly, I mean, if it did, well, he would, still be running PlayStation. And we all know that he isn't. And gee, I wonder why. Like I said, right? All the best-selling games of 2026 alone prove that single player is still the way to go. I will beat that freaking drum till it explodes, dude. People aren't engaging with the engagement systems, guys. They just want games that are worth their time. And historically, PlayStation delivered just that, but that's also why the expectations are so high now. But also, why the criticism they're getting is so loud too. It's not to be negative for negative's sake. No, right? That anger comes from passion. I care about what Sony is doing because I love PlayStation. I don't just say this for nothing. I criticize them because I know they can do better. None of this comes from hate, okay? It comes from love. And right now, what I'm seeing is a Sony PlayStation that is not living up to its own potential anymore. The audience hasn't disappeared. They are still here. They are, waiting patiently, 6 years now. But they're also playing other things because Sony isn't releasing consistent content enough that they made in-house anymore. They're just playing third-party games. Like the PS5 era maybe isn't it's not a disaster, I guess, but it is a problem either way. Can we admit that? The question now becomes whether Sony will listen to the philosophies of, say, a Shu Yoshida and return to their roots where people came to PlayStation for those unforgettable experiences. Or if they're just going to continue down this road of being, disconnected from their roots. Like Japan's studio is gone. Blue Point got shut down too. I am skeptical, but like always, maybe to my own fault, I'm still hopeful that things can change. They need to remember what made them who they are. And it wasn't 50 Helldivers-like games, right? Like that's for sure. Like, come on, man. Because if history has shown one thing, it's that players don't forget what made them fall in love with the platform in the first place. Like, you loved Nintendo games because you loved playing Mario and Zelda and Pokemon as a kid. Like, that is obvious. And it's the same thing with PlayStation, right? But sooner or later, they will expect that platform to come back to its senses. Otherwise, they're just going to lose them forever. I grew up with a PlayStation that released games like Final Fantasy VII, Jersey Devil, Legend of Dragoon, and games like Final Fantasy Tactics. And then as I grew up, those experiences became Final Fantasy X and 12 and Kingdom Hearts and Gran Turismo, Ratchet and Clank, and stuff like God of War and more. The Souls-like genre, for example, that began on PlayStation with Demon's Souls. We owe so much to what the PlayStation console has brought for all of us. And I just think where it is right now, especially with how candid Shu Yoshida was recently, proves to me that this is the case. We didn't forget PlayStation, but it seems like PlayStation has forgotten what defined them. Drop the live service dreams, please. Reject the ideology nonsense and return to making great games again. Or even could leave this platform forever too one day. It's only a matter of time for me to go too, right? I just wonder if Sony is willing to lose more just to chase that dragon because they want another Fortnite, when they could be making the next God of War, Uncharted, Ratchet, or Infamous instead and setting those trends again. I still have hope though, but what do you think? Thanks for being here. Subscribe if you'd like to, and see you guys next time.